It's a great pleasure to welcome to What's Next, Nicky Downing, who is the founder and Chief Executive Officer at Guideline BizTech. Now, Nicky is, as I mentioned, the founder of this organization and the creator of a RUBIQ Hub, which is an AI-first digital trust platform designed to help organizations operationalize artificial intelligence responsibly, securely, and at enterprise scale. Nicky, it's wonderful to have you with us. You're on the show for the first time. I'm really excited to talk about the subject matter today and what your organization does, because it's really something that is such an important aspect of AI in the world that we're living in today. Can you tell us a little bit more about Guideline BizTech, the business you have founded, what it is, what you do, and what made you find and start a business like this?
100%, Nicky. Thanks a lot, and thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Essentially, I got into governance, risk, and compliance quite a young age. I had a great opportunity to work with really some gurus in the field, in big corporate industry, in mining industry, banking industry, insurance. And it led me down a path that I hadn't actually initially envisioned for myself. But I have by nature quite a strong ethics principle framework that I've sort of always lived life on. So the subject of ethics, governance, risk, compliance, it really got me fascinated, and we had some doors open that we built some technology for the banking industry way back when, in sort of the late 90s into 2000. There was a lot of regulations and compliance requirements that came into the banking industry, and we managed to build a pretty cool piece of technology that a lot of the banks adopted at that time. And then that led us into building cloud solutions in about 2016. And then we hit sort of, 2018, and then on into 2022, when you started seeing the massive evolution of public adoption of AI, and what that was actually doing to transform organizations. And you can think about it a little bit like if you had a bunch of engineers designing a Formula One car. Brilliant engineering, great technology build, but it had no steering wheel. And that really got me thinking over the last sort of 25 years of having done what I've done. One of the major things that I saw in the industry is there's always been lots of technology. Technology is great. We are, especially as South Africans, we have technology adoption in abundance in our organizations. What we lack is the capability to make clear, informed decisions on the information that we get as executives or managers or line managers or supervisors, even, because that information is siloed. It's missing its connection points. So when we started out in 2024, or actually late 2023, and started building our AI stack, we wanted to build an AI application that people could trust. And that is really the foundation of the business that we are now sort of really sustainably building out, is that when you use AI, you need to be able to trust it. You need to be able to have some confidence in the decisions that you're making off of that information that the AI is presenting to you, especially looking at a future where AI will automate more and more.
That's absolutely fascinating, Nicky. And actually, as you were talking there, and you think about how organizations are adopting AI, how they're using AI, it's almost like a piece of the puzzle that you've created that fits into that strategy, which is fantastic. So why have you partnered specifically with RUBIQ, and what does each business bring to the partnership?
Okay. Well, just so that you understand, Guideline BizTech is the OEM company. We are the developers. We're a South African local-based company. We have local developers that are being incredibly innovative in right from the design board of how we have developed our AI journey. So we started from a ethics and governance principle-based design. Then we built technology so that we have the right foundations in order to build technology. But RUBIQ is the product stack. So we actually call it RUBIQ. So from it's a risk universe business intelligence quotient. That's kind of how we adopted the product name in the first instance. So we market and brand the RUBIQ tech stack. And that tech stack was designed to be able to support business transformation, to be able to empower people to do the right things, but to do it within ethical, principle-based technology and application support. So if I've got an AI and it's helping me identify and develop what my risk register is, what am I looking at in terms of my risk? One of the big components that a lot of people that are developing AI applications are missing is contextualization. So if you think, if you would hire the smartest CEO in the world, but you gave him no context of the business, or her no context of the business that they were supposed to be governing, running, setting strategy, and so on and so forth, that would be a bit like some of the AI projects that are evolving out of organization. I mean, the basic stat that's coming out is 4 out of 5, every AI project is failing. Now, the reason for that is we're not building from the correct principle-based ethical foundation. It doesn't have the right context. So we have to think of AI very differently to what we might have thought of a CRM system or an ERP system. It's still technology. You're working with technology. A lot of people go the other flip side and start to feel like they're actually working with a real persona, an identified individual. You're not. You are working with technology, and that technology needs to be governed. It needs to understand what it can and it can't do, not just from the guardrails of you mustn't jailbreak. I don't know if you understand that or know that term, but it's a bit okay, fantastic. So I can't just build an ethical framework to govern how the AI model will function. I have to build an ethical framework in my business context. And that's what we've done. That is why I think we're getting so much traction. And we are really seeing the AI drive the right transformation in the business. That AI must assist and support. I'm a big advocate of you don't put in AI solutions and reduce your staff by 50%. I think that is just a horrific concept. People are what keeps the world going around. It is people and people's intellect, your experience, your gut, your capabilities to be able to use that emotional quotient and actually resolve that final decision. And people have to stay accountable. Otherwise, we're heading for a very scary world in the next 10 to 15 years. So people are a vital, important component for me. And we use a principle, and we build all our AI in the RUBIQ stack, which is our technology suite, whether it's governance, risk, and compliance, or it's our CRM and operations suite, or it's our know who you're in business with on our KYC suite. It is about the fact that I can trust the AI that I use. And that human in the loop principle by design is vitally important for us, because at the end of the day, people have got to be empowered. So if I'm going to use AI to build a solution that takes on repetitive tasks and all the busy work, I need to also be thinking about the flip side of the coin. What do I do with the PA? Or what do I do with the general secretary staff, for example, that I might have AI support that repetitive work? Well, I need to have an internal development training, skills development program that is skilling my human being into that oversight role, into that direction based on their skills and capabilities. So, I mean, one of the things we built into our GRC suite was a skills and capability assessment evaluation tool set, so that I could take you, I could look at where your skills were, both from an IQ and a capacity from an EQ point of view. So what are the soft skills? And if you think about it, where's the skills from a human point of view? We're communicators. We're able to connect. I can look at you. I can have a direct conversation. And an AI can't, at this point, we're not in that evolution in AI. An AI can't do that. So human beings have to be involved in the mix. And I think that that is a very important component, because a lot of AI projects start in the IT department. You have to start in that ethical framework. And that then sets the trajectory correct, so that you are building that AI framework on an ethics principle basis by design, so that when you use that tool and you get a report, or as I said, you get a risk register, or you have a control evaluation that's been determined by the AI, or writing a policy, whatever the AI happens to be doing, you need to have a trust factor that says, yes, I've got a confidence that I as a human being can actually sign off on this. I can get behind it. It is something that, if I had the most resilient staff in the world, that I had complete trust in working with me, that's the confidence factor that you have to have in your AI. And that's a component that we're all maturing into. That I don't believe has successfully accomplished yet.
Okay. So you've mentioned the word trust a few times, and it's something that's a critical component of everything that you're saying, because if you don't have trust as one of the pillars of AI, the entire stack is going to collapse. That you don't have anything. So when you look at that in the AI industry, it's certainly lacking in many approaches that many organizations take. Why do you think that trust is such an important factor to consider?
Because you're dealing with an incredibly powerful technology. And that technology, we've already seen the kind of events that have been experienced recently with Claude, for example. You've seen a recent breakout that actually was quite an interesting one with Codex, ChatGPT, OpenAI, where the AI in the lab was posed a particular problem to solve. He couldn't solve it within the context. So the Codex couldn't actually solve the problem. He broke out of the containerized lab environment, went out to the World Wide Web, got the answers that the AI needed, and then shut himself back into the containerization, which I think was fascinating. But that's your power of AI, and that is only going to get stronger and faster and more efficient and more effective as we move forward. We have to understand that when we are building these technologies, you are inviting an incredibly capable, much more capable than you and I, Aki. It will outthink you every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. So you are inviting these identities, these roles and responsibilities that you're wrapping around a technology that has incredible power. So without a comprehensive framework for how we govern that, how do I ensure that, every single decision, every single action, because we're heading into the world of automation, real, true agentic AI. There's some baby steps that have been taken, particularly in Anthropic and Claude and so forth. So it's moving very fast. Technology and AI is we've never seen it in the likes of years gone past. What I used to build and deploy and release in 5 years is been done, a couple of months ago in 5 months. It's now been done in 5 weeks. So the evolution is only going to increase and speed up. Our entire delivery cycle has gone from quarterly releases to monthly releases to weekly releases. So that nature and speed, you have to be able to control that. Otherwise, there's a genie out of the bottle that can wreak havoc. So you can build AI that will actually create risk, but it'll create it so intrinsically interconnected into your organization, because you plug in this thing into data lake houses. You're giving it and feeding it your ops information, your finance information, your HR information. It's got highly, highly sensitive information. So there's huge work that's been done with the likes of Microsoft and the rails that they've built around Copilot and the governance that Microsoft has adopted. These are very, very good trends, but we're still controlling just the model. You have to contextualize. And that's what we've built. We've built a AI agent that has a ethical principle base that understands the context of your business, your stakeholders, how you need to interact with your customers, your employees, your suppliers, how your business is actually unique and different from the next business, so that I can consider, if you're given an instruction to an AI, are you doing something that is holistically benefiting you and ultimately causing risk or reputational damage or compromise, maybe not tomorrow, but in 6 months' time, for the business that you work for? You're an asset of the business, so is the AI. That ethical principle framework has to be built around the governance structure of the business in order to be successful, so that when you use AI, and if you're sitting as the CEO or the board of an organization, that's how you're going to gain that trust factor. And that's a differentiator. And that, I think, is very unique. It's going to be a long conversation in the halls of GRC professionals, ethics professionals, certainly, but it should be front and center on every single board agenda. Every single CEO should not be asking, what AI can we build IT department that will automate stuff for us? He should be asking, or she should be asking, what AI are we using that I can have confidence and trust in? Because at the end of the day, it's not the AI that's accountable. It's people, starting with that board and the CEO. So that really is the principle that we operate on.
Certainly, so much to think about what you've been saying, and it's so enlightening because there's such important aspects of the world of AI that we're living in that many organizations kind of overlook and just move ahead. And as you say, you know, so many organizations get that completely wrong at the beginning, and this is one of the very reasons that you know, AI projects fail. So, in your experience, Nicky, you know, working with organizations, which you work with many, what are the biggest risks that they face when they adopt AI?
It's understanding where to start, and understanding that I'm building technology. Technology is built off of good design. So if I race into a subscribed Codex, or a subscribed to Claude, a lot of people are building stuff on Claude, using co-workers of Claude, because the work has been done, a lot of it. And I've got tooling that I can use, but they just building the technology. Because, as I said, we're sitting with projects in IT. IT people are very smart and they understand this technology, but they understand technology. They are not governance, risk, and compliance and ethics practitioners. So even though they're adopting the EU Ethics Act principles, or they're adopting 42,001 as far as a risk management framework is concerned, if you don't have that experience as an ethics practitioner or governance, risk, and compliance practitioner, there are critical things that you just won't consider. It's, you know, it's like any professional in any industry. I might paint a picture, But a true master artist is going to see color and definition and the way that they actually construct those materials together to get that Van Gogh work of art is totally different because of that skill and capability. So that is a big missing gap, I believe. And I think because we're governance, risk, and compliance firm first, that are technologists, that's what's given us a key differentiator. And that's what I end up talking a lot to organizations. I mean, one of the things, as I said, that's happening at the moment, a lot of HR managers are coming back to us and saying, how do we talk about the conversation of AI and the relationship back to our staff as human beings? How do we manage and get people to understand that you might use ChatGPT as a local instance, a freebie for you because it's convenient? But what are you doing? You're taking company information. You want to write a letter quickly, or you want to put a contract together, and you go and use your personal ChatGPT. They don't understand that that data is open source and there are no guardrails or circumstances that is preventing that information to go into the broader LLM and that data to be used for training in that broader LLM. They don't understand that we've got to build applications first, not just use open source AI. Things like that, I think, are important awareness conversations. AI is fantastic. It will revolutionize so many things in the business. But if you're not putting the brakes on as a board and a C-level and saying, let's do this properly, let's actually understand what we're building in technology design, and let's define our outcomes and our objectives, you're going to have that 4 projects that fail before you hit one. And this stuff's not cheap to do. It takes some serious expertise and some tooling, and you can get into consumption that'll run away with you.
Yeah. And you see this happening every single day. When you look at those the risks, because when you look at the current race to automation, everyone is saying, no, we've got to do it. We've got to hurry up. Our competitors are doing this. And it does feel like a race to get that automation right, particularly the risks that come together with this race. And it presents massive challenges to these business leaders. What do you see those particular risks are when it comes to automation and the speed at which it's moving at, and everybody trying to get to that finish line?
I have used this word trust a lot, but it comes back to understanding the bigger picture of where you want to go. That, I think, right now is one of the biggest risks people are facing, because it's a lack of understanding. We're not looking at what are our objectives, but in the context of what can go wrong. Because we're not asking a lot of questions of what can go wrong. We're pushing what can we automate. How can we be leaders and get that AI-driven marketing tooling and augment our CRM or our ERP with AI-driven automated workflows? And we're not considering these AI agents' roles and responsibilities in the context of our business. So that analogy that I gave a little while ago, if I'm employing somebody and I give them no understanding of my policies and procedures, I give them little understanding of what my ethical code of conduct is, I give them no specific rules and regulations as to what they can and can't do, I don't put any monitoring KPIs in the context of my business, I put modeling, I put rules around my model, what my model can do. These are two very different concepts, is to guard against what the model will do versus understand the context of what that AI is doing in the job description you gave it, the persona that you gave it, in its work within the interactions of my processes and my business as a whole. We're building for risk as opposed to just taking a breath, understand what we want to achieve, put the ethical frameworks in, and then design our AI requirements against that risk-based ethical framework that has a governing, overarching monitoring, tooling, or capability around it. And it's early days. Listen, I mean, we really had AI that became mainstream 2022. We're 2026. So there's a long way still to go. There will be mistakes that are made. But if I can say anything, it's take a breath, pause, and think about the ethics first. Design by ethics framework first, then build out your technology architecture.
Now, one of the key principles you have built Guideline BizTech around is the human in the loop. And we often hear this, is that you got to take the human on the journey. You got to involve the human in the entire process. Could you unpack this for us, this principle? And it's such an important part of what we've been talking about. And explain to me why you believe in it so much.
100%. Well, as we've been speaking about, AI can do some fantastic things. And there is very much a feeling like we all race it to be better than the competitor, to be better than the next organization, to be automating things in our organization. Just before I talk about the human in the loop, somebody told me a story just the other day about IKEA. I can't remember exactly what the stats were, but IKEA built various AI applications that removed something like 4,000 jobs in IKEA. But not one single job was lost in the organization. Now, that to me is absolutely fascinating. The productivity of that organization, from the launch of the AI that they built and put into processes, repetitive tasks, and so on and so forth, increased by 30% in 6 months. Now, that's the power of AI. Every single one of those jobs was repurposed, those individuals. They were put into upskilling programs. They were put into development programs for those EQ skills that people have, that intellect, those communication capabilities, those human gut components that ultimately are needed to problem solve. That's the aspect of what I 100% am behind in human in the loop. So AI can do a lot. But if you're going to automate processes and cut the human out in the decision and the accountability checkpoints, you're heading for risk. You are building a monster versus building an enabler. So I'm a big advocate of identify what your process is, what's the AI's job and role, where are the human oversight checkpoints. You wouldn't take a junior individual that is still learning and with experience and put them into an executive management position with no oversight. You wouldn't do that. So don't do it with AI. Even though the AI is very, very smart, you want that humanity, that accountability that remains. And that's our basic philosophy around keeping the human in the middle, or the human in the loop, as far as the process is concerned. Accountability has to stay with the human.
Absolutely. Finally, how does RUBIQ Hub and its Ethos AI governance layer, which is critical, ensure that AI is used ethically and responsibly? Because it's one thing to have the layer, but how do you actually ensure that it's used ethically and responsibly?
It's all in the architecture. So what we did when we built our AI stack is we actually started with Ethos. Ethos is the governance intelligence engine. It's the be all and the end all, because we wanted to make sure, as I've been speaking about for the last little while, that what the outcome was AI that we could trust. So how could we do that? Well, I used 30 years of experience of myself my colleagues, having worked in the governance, risk, compliance, and ethics space, to be able to pull out key components. How could we provide an oversight capability on something that moves beyond the speed of light in its thinking and processing and is only going to get faster, to make sure that the outcome decisions were trustworthy, that we could have dependence, assurance, and reliance on. So if I were to audit every single action, task, activity, and decision that any AI we build, how would I do that? And the overall ethical framework we built in Ethos has 5 specific pillars. It first of all checks the logic and the sanity of data that's flowing through the agents back to the human being. It looks at the stakeholder, greatest good. So if we take this action, will the outcome be the most positive across the boards for the organization, for its employees, for its shareholders, for its customers, for its suppliers, for its contractors, for the community as a whole, for the objectives of the organization, and what I'm driving in value statements as far as the organization. Now, that's a big one. Then it doesn't look at a single data point. One of the biggest risks we have in businesses is silos of information. Nobody has yet fully solved that. There's a lot of data science people that are working on large, big bodies of data. AI has to work on bodies of data. But I still end up, even though I've got data in a data lake, I still end up working on siloed data. I don't step back with that sort of bird's eye, 1,000-mile view and look at how the data points connect. Ethos does that. So that when I look at an email, I look at my finance data, look at my HR data, I look at the key critical components, I look at my risk analysis, I look at my control capability, I look at my delivery and ops capability, I look at my track record. Then Ethos makes a determination of the action the AI has taken in automation or proposed automation, because remember, there's human in the middle, the human in the loop component. So if I'm proposing an automated action, I need to get that human in the loop authorization and sign off. But in order for that human to make that determined decision, have trust and assurance they're making the right decision, they have to have that background, that framework, and they have to understand it's ethical and compliant, and they have to understand it's not your opinion that I'm working on. It's not a bias. It's not a human advantage or twist that has been proposed in me signing off on an action that will automate the AI. That's what Ethos's job is. And he does it 24/7 across the universe of the entire information landscape with the guardrails built around Ethos in order to support that decision making for you. And that is AI you can trust.
Wow. Absolutely fascinating. You've given us so much to think about today, Nicky. And these are critical components and pillars of that foundation of AI that every organization should be looking at and adopting first before embarking on any projects. And certainly, I'm sure that many people watching this have said to themselves, we perhaps need to change our approach. And I guess that if you do embark on the approach that you've spoken about today and laid those important foundations, you'll probably find that most of those AI projects that fail are going to succeed just by tweaking and adopting and changing a few things along the line. Nicky Downing, who is the founder and chief executive officer at Guideline BizTech, thank you so much for the insightful conversation and sharing your thoughts with us today, Nicky.
Most welcome, Aki. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.